Welcome to chess, ladies and gentlemen. All right, cool. So as you guys know, unfortunately, Wesley did get knocked out of the Magnus Carlsen Invitational, the fourth stop, I believe, or third in the Champions Chess Tour. Everything Skillings, the fourth. I had somebody request a Eugene Torre versus Wesley game a little while back, and I told him I was gonna wait till after the tournament was over. So I figured, hey, I'll go ahead and do that right now. And I was notified through the messages that I have to tweak the way I'm saying something. So, for everybody who is coming and watching my video, who has not came to my channel or watched my videos before, I will say, Mariming Salamat, Po, Sa, Na Nude, Ing, a King Magat video or channel. Appreciate it very much for coming by, taking a look at my stuff. For all of my people that are in the Philippines that have been seeing my stuff so many times, too many to count. Magandang umaga, magandang hapon, kamusta, and Masaya Akong Makita Kang Muli. Appreciate you guys coming by. Nice to see you again. All that good stuff. So I appreciate everybody that comes by and supports my stuff. All the comments that I get. Even though I've reached where I'm at, I'm not so big. To where I still can't, pretty much respond to everybody's messages. So those of you that do watch my stuff, do know that as of right now, if you do leave a comment, I will respond, or at least put a little like and a heart next to it, or question marks, whatever. Anyway, if you guys are ready to go, let's take a look and see what we have for this game. All right, cool. So we have E4, C5, got knight to F3, knight to C6, as I say. Now, this game was played in 2008. This is another game taken out of the 2008 Asian Masters Circuit, GMA. So as I said before, pretty much when you play E4, you have the Sicilian. Almost all games are going to go knight to F3, and not all of them go knight to C6, but, almost all of them do go knight to F3. And so, like I said, we do have knight to C6 from black, and we have bishop to B5. So we have it's a very complicated one to say. It is, let me see what it's called. It is called, I'm going to flip over real quick. It is called Sicilian Defense, is it the canal attack? No, it's not the canal attack. Yeah, it's called the Niezmetinov Rossolimo attack. Bam. That's a lot. It's a lot to say. Anyway, so if you guys are ready, I'm going to go ahead and show you guys the novelty of the game. Y'all probably like, what? This soon? Yes. As of 2008, D6 is the novelty of the game. That means that as of 2008, this position had never been reached before between players above 2,200. And the crazier thing about it is, even as of 2021, this is still a novelty. There's only one game in the database. This game here, Eugene Torre versus Wesley is the only game in the database that has played D6. It's insane. So we see castles by black. We have bishop to D7. We got rook to E1. We got A6. Bishop takes C6. Bishop takes C6. And we have D4. Of course, trying to open the game up, as you pretty much almost always do. Pawn takes D4, knight takes D4, knight to F6. We got knight takes C6. So we have been able to snap that bishop off for black or for white. But that pretty much just makes it pretty equal because now we each have a dark square bishop. So we see pawn takes C6 and we have C4. And as you guys know, this is kind of like a Maroczy bind type setup. It does sometimes waste the tempo to put this C pawn here. It just kind of comes down to preference. I mean, whether you want to put your knight behind the pawn or in front of the pawn. I think it's probably about the same either way. So we do see G6 by black. That's a good way, a hyper modern way to play, putting the bishop on this long diagonal. It can be pretty influential, and it could do a good job protecting the king there. So we see knight to C3, bishop to G7. We got bishop to F4. We got knight back to D7, giving this bishop, ultimate influence. So we see queen to D2. We don't want to see any bishop takes and pawn having to take, and then we're going to have like some really ugly, double pawns here. We do see queen to A5. So that's kind of trying to exclam a little bit. this attack here on c3. And so we see rook a to c1. And we see castles by black. Now, if we back up here, you know, after rook to c1, it kind of seems like bishop takes, rook takes, and then you have, you know, queen taking on a2. Why don't we take on a2? Well, I'm glad you asked that. So let's take on c3 with the bishop. Rook takes, queen takes. We see queen to d4, which does put yourself in a pin, in a fork, I mean. After e5, we take on d6 with the queen. Bishop takes f4. So you see, we're giving up like the whole kitchen sink right here. But we're getting some good compensation because e5 comes, and the main problem that black has is the fact that they haven't castled their king, right? So after queen takes b2, we see rook to d3. Queen comes back to b7 to protect. We see e6. Knight comes to f8. We see queen down to d4, attacking this lonely rook in the corner. And you can try to save it. It's not the best, but you can try to save it. And then after pawn takes f7, forcing the king to take on f7, you see queen takes f4 with check, king to g7. And as you can see, this queen is going to come here. And the king is looking very, very unhappy because that's mate. Coming back, you know, it's just not, it's not lovely. There's all kinds of mates in the position. So that is why we don't take the pawn, because it just gives white too much. But it is a lot to calculate. So you definitely have to be able to calculate that far, which is crazy far. Anyway, so we see bishop to h6, trying to get rid of that bishop on g7. Bishop takes h6, queen takes h6. We have knight to e5. So that's a nice central move. You know, the knight is just perfectly centered. You know, it's that octopus in the center. It is attacking this pawn as well. So we protect it with b5. We got f5. You know, this pawn is really good in the center of the board. So either you're going to have d5 or f5. D5 is very heavily covered, so f5 is your push. So the pawn takes f5, rook takes f5. We see queen down to h3. We have rook a to f8. We have rook to e2. You know, of course, you know we're lacking defenders of this pawn here. So we see rook to h5. We got queen to e3. Rook to f7. We got h3. g5. We have knight to e4, which is a very, very strong move in the position, centralizing your own knight. This rook is laterally defending this pawn, so you don't have to keep the knight there anymore. And you're eyeballing like this pawn and, you know, just kind of like some swinging situations and stuff, trying to, you know, get into this black position. So the knight comes to g6. You know, as I showed you guys before, you are eyeballing this pawn. So if you want to go ahead and pause the video and see what a really, really good move for black is, or for white is actually, go ahead and do so real quick. Okay, cool. So some of you guys have heard me talk about in some of my games that I've showed before, is the disconnection of pieces. So as you can see right now, this queen is protecting this pawn laterally in conjunction with this rook, right? So what is a really, really good move to basically disconnect the queen from this protection of this pawn? It should automatically come to you because there's really only one move, and that is c5. Okay, so if you got c5, congratulations, you were able to visualize like the disconnection. So what this does is it forces either the advance of the d pawn or the capture here. But the problem with capturing here is you'd capture here, and then you'd be having way too much on here. So for example, if we did that, you know, rook would be taken, and then you know, you got to put the queen somewhere, and it's going to be, you know, knight's going to be taken and stuff. Not too good. But d5 is more of the same, because what happened in the game is the knight came down to g3, attacked the rook, forced the rook to h4, and then the queen took on g5. So as you can see, you know, it did a really, really good job for white, and it did win a pawn. You know, so you are up a pawn in this position, but you have rook h to f4, and we see knight to h5 in the game. Now, this actually gives black a very good, you know, chance here, because in this particular position, black is not doing very well at all. So in this particular position, knight to h5 was a mistake. It wasn't a blunder, but it definitely gave black way too much. The move in this position is actually rook to e6. After the rook 7 comes to f6, you would actually be taking on c6. It just gives like a little counter attack on this pawn over here that's not defended. And of course you can't take back because you're just going to be losing your rook on f4, and you're just down a pawn. Actually, 2 pawns in this position. You don't want that. So The queen, after rook takes c6, the queen will come down to d2, giving a counter attack and triply attacking this f2 pawn, which f2 and f7 are always super, super weak. So the rook will come to c8 with check. After king to f7, you see rook to f1. Rook will take on f2, and then don't forget that your queen is hanging. So we'd be taking here on d2, and after rook took d2, you see that you guys, you'd be up a pawn. You can trade here or something, whatever you want to try to do, but you are up a pawn as white, and you do have this rook behind this pawn, so that's pretty important too. So, like I said, we did have knight to h5, and then after knight, rook 4 to f5 attacking the queen, we saw queen to g4. So as you guys saw, like knight to h5 just kind of wasted a tempo. It didn't really do much to improve white's position, so it just gave black too many attacking chances. So after rook came to f2, with rook took on f2, we saw rook taking f2, then rook taking f2, and it's a cute little like tactic that black is setting up in this position. So we see queen to e6 with check. Now, of course, if you did take with the king on f2, you'd see queen to d2. King would come to g3, then you see queen taking c1, which pretty much is the same thing that happened in the game. Because after queen to e6, king came to f8. We did see king take f2, and then queen to d2, check, king to g3, queen took c1. And so we see queen to f5, we got king to g8, we got queen to e6 with check. We see king back to f8, and we see queen to f5. And it's in this position that the players actually agree to a draw. Now, the main issue is the fact that this queen is attacking this pawn, so it's trying to win, it's trying to win a pawn. Because now the pawns are equal, and there's not really a good way to defend against it. So let's say, for example, after king to g8, you did try to come back with queen to f2, right? To be like, oh, I got this, right? I'm protecting the pawn. You would actually be losing now because you're just dropping your knight. Your knight is actually grim on the rim, so that's not where you want to be. And after king goes to h2, you would be taken on h5, and as you can see, you are down the entire piece. So there's not really a good way to actually defend that pawn. So you have to just basically keep checking so that you don't get down a pawn. And I actually didn't look at this here. Let me see. Is this not something? I feel like that might be something. I don't know. Maybe this just allows you to just get checked a lot. Oh, I think that would just be the same thing. That's true. Okay. All right. So yeah. You don't want to do that. Okay, so yeah, that was pretty much the only option that you had, is just continuously checking. But anyway, I appreciate you guys stopping by. Maraming Salamat Po, King Magai Kaibagan, Mabu Hai Ingat Lagi, all the people that are just getting up, eating breakfast, Almasal Tayo, and I appreciate you guys coming by. And just give me more suggestions. I think I'm gonna do. There's some. I think another game or two of Eugene Torre with Wesley. So I'll be grabbing some more and stuff, seeing what else I might do. I might do one of the one of the finals. Whoever's playing in these finals, I actually haven't checked. I might be doing me a game or two of that. So we'll see how everything goes. But I appreciate you guys stopping by, and I'll see you guys next time. All right.